Hello, everybody. My name is Mr. Ritter. Oh, but you know, that's not really the name I prefer. Would you like to know the name I really like? Grandpa Grumpy. That's the name my granddaughter Gracie calls me. And if you would like to call me Grandpa Grumpy or Mr. Grumpy or plain old Grumpy, I hope you will. Be my guest. I'm here today to tell you a story in a way you may never have seen before. A Kamishibai story. What's that, you say? Well, this box right here is a Kamishibai theater, and inside it is a Kamishibai story. Kamishibai. It's a big, strange word, but it breaks down into two simple words. Kami, the first half of Kamishibai, means paper. Ta-da! And Shibai, the second half of Kamishibai, means theater. Paper, theater. Are you ready for a story? I am. Here's one. Shall we do this? This is a story you probably know. The Shoemaker and the Elves. It's a Grimm's fairy tale, which means its origin is probably Germany or Northern Europe. The Shoemaker and the Elves. Once there lived an old shoemaker and his wife. They worked together to make shoes, and they sold them in their small shop. They worked very hard, but no matter how hard they worked, they made very little money. And one night the old man said, "I have only enough leather left to make one pair of shoes." "Oh, but that's okay. I'll do my best to make them as nice as I can." And he cut the leather into pieces, and he carefully laid the pieces on his workbench. And then he said, "Oh, it's already very late. I'll just stitch these pieces together tomorrow morning." And the next morning he woke up very early to continue working, and to his great surprise, sitting on the workbench was a pair of magnificent, beautiful shoes. He examined the shoes very, very closely, and he didn't find not even one bad stitch. They were very well-made shoes. The first customer that came into the shop quickly bought them for a very good price as soon as he saw what a fine pair of shoes they were. And the shoemaker was very happy. Now he had more money to buy more leather and make more shoes. He went out and bought enough leather to make 2 pair of shoes. And the shoemaker worked all day long, and by evening he had all the pieces of leather cut out. Everything was ready to be stitched, but he was tired again, so he went to bed. Next morning, before sunrise even, the shoemaker and his wife came downstairs to start stitching the shoes. But to their great surprise, sitting on the workbench were 2 new pairs of beautifully stitched shoes. The shoes were so beautiful that the shoemaker and his wife were speechless. Later that morning, a customer came into the shop and bought the 2 pair of shoes at an even higher price than the shoes sold the day before. This time, the shoemaker was able to buy enough leather for 4 pair of shoes. And then the next day, he could buy enough leather for 8 pair of shoes. Someone was helping them make these wonderful shoes every night, and they had no idea who it was. What was going on? Word of the magnificent shoes spread, and soon there was a long line in front of their shop. Everybody wanted to buy these shoes because they were so very well made and so comfortable too. One day, As the shoemaker and his wife were working, his wife said to him, "I wonder who's helping us make these fine shoes every night. Must be a very kind and generous person. I'd certainly like to say thank you to him." "Well, I was thinking the same thing," said the shoemaker. "Let's stay awake tonight and find out who's helping us." So that night, when the clock struck midnight, they crept downstairs and peeked into the shop. And on the workbench, they saw two little elves working very hard and very fast. They stitched all the pieces of leather together. When the shoes were finished, the elves polished them. They put the laces into the holes, and all at an amazing speed. And by daybreak, all the shoes were neatly lined up on the table. The next day, the wife said to the shoemaker, "These elves have been very, very kind to us. We should do something nice for them in return." And she thought for a moment, and then she said, "I have an idea. I will make some nice clothes for them. It's winter, surely they must feel cold in those flimsy clothes they're wearing now." "That's a fine idea," said the shoemaker, "and I will make shoes for them." And happily they set about making their gifts for these little helpers. By evening, everything was ready. They carefully laid each item out on the workbench, and then they waited for the elves to come. And when the clock struck midnight, the window blew open, and the elves came in. To their great surprise, sitting on the workbench were the tiny clothes and shoes that the shoemaker and his wife had made for them. They tried them on. Everything fit perfectly, and they were so happy they danced and they sang for the whole night. Then, just before sunrise, they jumped back out of the window, and the shoemaker and his wife waved goodbye, and they never saw them again. But the shop continued to do very well, and the shoemaker and his wife lived a long and happy life. The